Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. If you are new to the channel, Guns and Gadgets is where you'll get Second Amendment news on a daily basis, oftentimes multiple times a day. So if you want to stay in the know, please hit that subscribe button down below and check the channel a couple times a day. That way you'll stay up to date, because YouTube usually doesn't push all the notifications if you publish a lot of freedom stuff. And that's what we do here on Guns and Gadgets. Let's jump right into this. Last week, a couple days ago, 34 members of Congress sent a letter to the ATF demanding information regarding their 1 billion firearm record registry that came out thanks to Gun Owners of America. Link to the video that I did on that is above. I'm going to put this letter here on screen and we'll go over it. This was penned on February 3rd and directed to Marvin Richardson, who is still the acting director of the ATF. And it says, "Dear Acting Director Richardson, thank you for the response to our letter that we sent back in November of 2021. We wanted to follow up on several issues raised by your response and reiterate our concern over ATF's proposed rule requiring federal firearms licensees to preserve records older than 20 years. We were astounded to learn that ATF has accumulated nearly 1 billion records under the out-of-business records imaging system. The administration's proposed rulemaking, ATF 2021 R-05, will drastically increase this already astronomical number of records on American gun owners. Current regulations authorizing FFLs to discard records after 20 years were first published in 1985 and have not been changed in the nearly 4 decades since then. This regulation was enacted to ensure that the federal government complied with the existing law restricting the creation of a federal gun registry. It is therefore concerning that the administration would seek to repeal a decades-old rule without citing any research or data justifying the need for retaining firearm record transactions in perpetuity. Indeed, the only basis for the proposed rulemaking is that firearms are durable and can be operational and in circulation for more than 20 years. Durability, though, always has been a characteristic of firearms. The proposed rulemaking also states that some traces of firearms were conducted on records older than 20 years, but neglected to provide a specific number that would demonstrate any realistic need for ATF to mandate perpetual storage of records older than 20 years. In fact, when the ATF published its final rule on the retention of records in 1985, the agency cited one of its own studies, which concluded that relatively few requests for traces of guns involved transactions older than 20 years. Nor does it appear that circumstances have changed much over the course of nearly 4 decades, as the firearms trace data for 2022 published on ATF's website shows that the average time to crime is 7.01 years from the point of purchasing a firearm, with nearly half occurring within the first 3 years. Congress provided statutory authority for ATF to accumulate and store certain records of firearms transactions from out-of-business FFLs, but Congress also, by statute, has prohibited ATF from maintaining a national gun registry. ATF's new proposal to require FFLs to keep all records of sales in perpetuity means that, eventually, ATF will sweep up records for every gun sale in America that occurs at a licensed dealer. ATF's proposal is even more concerning given the fact that ATF has been making its out-of-business records increasingly accessible and more easily searchable. Whereas such records traditionally consisted of paper files stored in boxes, ATF then moved to microfiche and now to digitized image files. ATF's database is looking more and more like a prohibited database of firearms and law-abiding gun owners. That said, we have several questions to which we would like written responses. Of the annual trace data that you are providing in your response letter, how many and what percentage of traces were conducted that required records older than 20 years? Please provide a breakdown of the trace requests conducted and percentage of traces for firearms that required records, which were 10 years old, then 11 years old, and for every year after, up to 20 years. Of the nearly billion records you reportedly have on file, how many of them involve transactions that are older than 20 years? Your response states that the National Tracing Center does not have the ability to determine the successful prosecution of hundreds of thousands of crime gun traces, nor can it link a trace for a specific prosecution. We understand these limitations. Without these numbers, what concrete evidence can ATF provide to demonstrate that records older than 20 years are useful or necessary for ATF to complete firearms traces? Your response states that NTC only traces crime guns, and every time must be identified as such by the requester selecting the appropriate crime codes. Please provide a list of all crime codes a law enforcement agency must choose from when a trace is requested. Please provide a breakdown of all the trace requests conducted in the last 3 years by the crime codes that NTC uses. The out-of-business records imaging system is simply one database. Can you provide a number of records included in each of ATF's other databases, which include firearms purchasers information, like multiple sales system, Access 2000, and the Firearms Recovery Notification Program? We would urge that you consider rescinding the proposed regulation that would require FFLs to preserve firearms records older than 20 years. Indeed, the evidence provided by ATF thus far demonstrates that such records likely have little utility in prosecuting crime, yet raise serious concerns about whether ATF is creating a prohibited national gun registry. And it was signed by 34 members of Congress. It was penned by Michael Cloud of Texas. I'll show these signature pages real quick. If you want to see if your member of Congress was there, you can pause it and take a peek. But this is a good follow-up to ATF's response to the initial request that was done in November. And I'll link that video above if you want to see that letter as well. But ATF has obviously been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and 34 members of Congress, not 400 plus, are demanding ATF respond to the responses that were provided from the first letter from, I think it was 52 members of Congress, or 54. So it's good to see an immediate response by Congress, and we'll see what the ATF responds with this time. Last time they came right out and said we have 1 billion records that we probably shouldn't have, going all the way back to the NFA and the Gun Control Act. So this isn't good that the ATF is keeping these records. There's some sinister plot behind it. We all know what that would be, and these members of Congress are calling them out on it, and I'd like to see that. So let me know what you guys and gals think down below. I will have a second video this afternoon about a bill that is, it's been there for a little bit, but there's a new fervor behind this bill, and it has nothing but bad ramifications. So stay tuned to the channel, subscribe if you haven't already. That's a way to stay in the know. You hit that bell icon and ring it to all notifications. And I thank you for your time. Until we see each other again, be safe, stay vigilant, and carry a gun to keep you, your friends, your community, your family safe. And a gun on your hip is more effective than a cop on the phone. And we are the new Sons of Liberty. Take care, everybody.